Hello and welcome for the China Negotiator. I'm Andrew Hubert, and today we're on part 3 of the new series, We've Got to Win This Thing. And today is the day we look at the United States' no-deal options. That's the circumstances and the responses of the United States as a negotiating entity in the event that there is no agreement, there's no negotiated agreement with the Chinese side. It gets a little bleak today, but it's not the worst case scenario. It is the best alternative to no agreement. So we're looking really to minimize the worst case scenario. So you should use this as that kind of planning tool. The takeaway for today's talk. The United States is in a long-term conflict to subjugate China. It may not have started out that way, but this is where we are now. Tariff Plus is going to be the new benchmark for costs. And the biggest threat is OBOR or BRI, the Bridge and Road Initiative. There are 3 aspects of a best alternative to no agreement that we're going to go through. We did this last week with China, and there'll be a link somewhere to that. But we're going to start by doing a snapshot analysis of the no-deal situation. No solutions, no reactions. We just want to know what we've got. Then we'll talk about immediate responses and reactions, and then we will look at the longer-term ramifications and strategic responses. So let's start by looking at the immediate, the observed situation. First, U.S. and China are enemies. Next, inflation and shortages, and finally, disruption becomes the new brand image for the United States. Let's look at each one of those in a little bit more detail. So the U.S. and China are enemies in this scenario. You don't keep 25% tariffs on a country's economic output and think that you are just having a squabble. Domestically, China is escalating anti-U.S. rhetoric, and in the South China Sea, China is just unfettered at the moment. The China Zone trade bloc that is going to follow the OBOR planning map, but go a little bit heavier on Southeast Asia, that is falling into place nicely for the Chinese, for Beijing, and could easily be weaponized over time. Next, there's going to be inflation and shortages. Tariffs are already working their way through the economy. Commercial relations with China are going to continue for certain classes of businesses, but we're all going to be feeling the effects of inflation and supply chain gaps because the reason people were doing business in China is because that's where it was efficient to do business. We're now looking at the next cheapest, next almost as efficient place as China, and it's not going great. And finally, America is going to be rebranded. We are, the disruptors of the world. And that includes you. That includes frontline negotiators. You've got to face up to this. A lot of you have never worked in an environment where America was considered the enemy. But you might be in that environment now, or you're coming into it. So the United States seems to be giving up the leader of the free world mantle, and China is going to be making a play for it. So the trade regime we built is disintegrating, and we are not showing much interest in putting anything else up in its place. So let's look at the action plan, the somewhat immediate responses over the next 6 months or so that you can expect from the United States. We're looking at a broader array of policy tools, new tariffs, and a more difficult investment environment in the United States. Let's take a look. So the main policy plan for the foreseeable future is force and more of it. We've already tariffed China as much as we can, I think. So look for embargoes, boycotts, and regulatory restrictions to become more important. But we're not done with tariffs. You can expect the tariffs to spread along the Asian supply route, places you've been told that you should think about investing. Well, everyone knows. And the tariff man is coming. And finally, in the short term, the U.S. has been effectively rebranded. The good news is we are taken more seriously abroad. The bad news is we are considered to be a serious problem. Ba-dum-bump. But in all honesty, we'll talk how to handle this in a minute. But at this point, you should be going through that realization process that, this is real, it's happening, and you got to look at how you are being perceived overseas, because it affects your decision making, and it's starting to affect the options you have. No judgments, though. Finally, we'll look at the strategic response or the ramification to a longer-term no-deal situation. America First agenda is the U.S. brand identity. I told you we'd be talking about it again. Institutionalized competition, which is another word for hostility with China, and it's a small, small world. So America First is going to be the brand identity for China and everyone in China's zone. Overseas counterparties are going to be judging you by the new brand. And you have two basic options to leverage this. You can lean into it and be a transactional, aggressive, cutthroat negotiator, which for some industries is fine. If you want a partnership, or if you need a partnership, if you need the other side to want to see you win, which is my definition for partnerships in Asia, then the approach you might want to take is to say, yes, it is very difficult. It is has become quite frightening in the United States. It's a good thing you've got me to help you. And this leads to the second strategic ramification, which is a permanent competition with China that ranges from the sort of friendly to out and out frightening. And U.S.-China competition is going to spread to alliance partners if we let it. And so far, we are letting it. And that leads to the final strategic ramification. It's a small world if you're an American. So the worst case scenario is that China weaponizes the Belt and Road Initiative planning map. This new China zone could control, or will control, important markets, yes, sure, but also natural resources and geography. So I don't know if we're still using the phrase dual purpose, because I think everything is now, but so this is a big dual purpose threat, both to markets and to national security. And we are just watching it happen. It's just unfolding right now, unimpeded and unchallenged. We have no voice in this. And China is going to be influencing technical standards and benchmarks and conventions in such a way that it favors them when it comes to the control of intellectual property. Final word. Conflict with China will be multidimensional. It's going to be long-term, and it's going to be deep. It is likely to spread into regional or alliance-based conflict. U.S. consumers will bear the direct and indirect costs of tariff and trade restrictions, regardless of who wins. And finally, it's up to you now. You're living on your wits now. God help us all. The global world order that the United States pretty much assembled brick by brick since World War II, that's largely gone. And we are losing prestige abroad rapidly, which means you are now on your own. It's all on you, the frontline manager, your wits and your ability to make deals and to build and repair relationships. China is going to be building its own new economic alliance, and the United States just doesn't seem to have much interest in global business. So if you've gotten this far in the presentation, it means, you do have cause to be concerned, but it's also your time to shine, because there's no backstop anymore if you are an American negotiating overseas. They are not afraid of your government anymore. They think they've got your number. Okay, good talk. Thanks very much. If you found this useful, like and share. Talk to you later.